Is this on?
Yes, my lord.
Good. Hello, this is God speaking. Can we dial that down?
Yes, my lord.
Thanks. Welcome, new arrival, to the Eternity Ward. Please take a number and make your way down to the left or the right to the waiting room. All you need is the refreshments I made just for you. I would tell you to steer clear of the apples, they're forbidden, and the 2 snakes. I mean, fools, sorry, that are chewing the fat in the corner, but you probably wouldn't listen anyway. So good luck, I bless you, and on your way.
Welcome to the Eternity Ward, where we flick through old copies of Reader's Digest and chat with our buddies while we wait for an appointment with God. I'm Nick McKinnon.
And I'm Chris Adams.
Hello, Chris. How are you today?
How am I today? I'm good. Top of the world.
You're on drugs.
I'm on a slight bit of medication, yes, just because I haven't been that great with tooth pain.
Tooth pain is the worst.
It was not good at all. It was like 10 out of 10 pain. I was walking around singing that Adam Sandler song in my head, you know, kill me, please, you know, put a bullet in my brain. I want to die. I couldn't take it. But I'm feeling fine. How are you feeling?
I am not on medication. Well, other than my cloudy apple cider. Other than that, I'm doing peachy. I just quit my job, Chris, so I'm doing well.
Quit your job?
Yeah, I quit.
I heard you quit your job. So you were working as a chaplain.
I still am working as a chaplain.
Say what? I thought you quit your job.
Yeah, well, I'm a very slow quitter.
You've given notice.
I've given notice, yeah. I will finish out the year.
Right.
And then I shall depart. We don't want to talk about me, Chris.
I do want to talk about that, though.
No, right.
Because I actually think it's there's some segue, some relevance to the topic that we're talking about.
You suggesting I'm being pushed out?
No.
That'll be funny for you once you realise what the topic is, dear listener.
No, just in the sense that, you know, what are you doing? What's the next thing?
I'm moving to a far more difficult job, Chris, which is the job of child rearing. I'm a full-time stay-at-home housewife.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Which is cool. Totally cool. I mean, that could be a whole topic of a podcast. I'm sort of one that goes, if society really valued the raising of children, maybe we'd pay stay-at-home parents to do that job. I mean, it's a job. It's huge.
I don't know where the money would come from. I mean, we already sort of do pay parents. Like, there's already a family tax benefit. It's crazy the amount of stuff we're eligible for, even though we do not struggle for a living.
That would be nice. But no, the reason I sort of bring it up is that there is a stigma attached to even just mothers who, you know, can choose to stay at home as opposed to go and have a career. You're choosing to do that now. Aren't you worried that some people are going to be like, you're a what? A stay-at-home dad?
So since the 70s, Chris, when feminism got kick-started, women's rights have gone up and up and up. Women's happiness has gone down and down and down. Men's happiness has gone up and up and up. It's one of the really fascinating occurrences in the last 50 years of the social sciences, that with more rights for women and more options in society, that their happiness has trended downwards, whereas men's has gone upwards. So there's something strange going on there. No one's quite sure what, but...
Yeah, that's interesting. Which sort of leads me into, I guess, what am I trying to say? No, I don't know what I'm trying to say, Nick.
I don't know either.
I'm trying to segue into bringing in the topic.
I can't segue, but I can get us started. I've got a question for you, Chris.
You've got a question.
I've got a question.
I've got an answer, I hope.
Of course you do. You've got a lifeline to God even if you don't have an answer. Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, Ashley Judd, Kate Beckinsale, Rose McGowan, Heather Graham.
Beep, they're all women.
You're a genius.
Yes.
How do you know that, though? in this gender fluid society that we live in, Chris? You haven't checked their genitals. I know a man who has.
Which man is that?
That would be not Bob, the other one, Harvey Weinstein.
And this is our topic.
This is our topic. So what happened today, Chris? There was a news story today.
There's been news stories every day for the past week or so. I don't know, how long's this Weinstein story been rolling for?
Well, about 35 years, according to the women.
Yeah, but it's only just surfacing now, although a lot of people say that a lot of people have known for a long time, but now we all know.
Now we all know. So do you want to give a recap of what's happened?
All right, was there a question we're bringing?
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. I just gave you the answer.
Harvey Weinstein was the answer.
I'd be awesome on Sale of the Century, wouldn't I?
Okay, recap. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Harvey Weinstein was a movie producer in Hollywood. He's been doing it for decades. He's very well known. He's made a whole bunch of films such as Pulp Fiction and Shakespeare in Love, Gangs of New York, Lion, the recent Australian movie, which I loved. Go watch Lion, everyone out there. If you've watched any Quentin Tarantino movie or any of Michael Moore's documentaries, they're all movies that Harvey Weinstein had his dirty little fingers in.
Oh, that's my
Hello, pilot.
That's my dog. You mentioned Harvey. She doesn't like Harvey. I think she's settled now.
Good. Yeah, so he's this movie producer that used his power as being a high-up movie executive to force himself on young actresses as they're coming up in Hollywood. There's something like 50-odd women that have come out and said that he behaved inappropriately to various different degrees, whether it be kissing them or grabbing their breasts or any of those sort of terribly inappropriate things. He apparently asked for massages quite regularly. Was a common one and didn't take no for an answer quite often. So those are the sort of things that have been going on, and in the wake of that there was another actress called Alyssa Milano who worked with Rose McGowan, who was one of the women that was sexually harassed. And so Alyssa Milano wrote this Twitter post saying, if all the women who have been sexually harassed or assaulted wrote "Me Too" as a status, we might give people a sense of the magnitude of the problem. And in response to this, there was thousands and thousands of people sharing their own stories of sexual harassment and sexual assault through Twitter and Facebook and online in various different ways. And I don't know what your reaction to that was, Chris, but I know for me, like we've both worked with young people a lot, and so it's probably not as surprising to us as what it would be for many other men. Maybe it might be more obvious to women possibly, but certainly, like, I don't think I was as surprised as what maybe other men were, but I might just be wrong about that. But even for me, it's shocking for me the number of people that have been on my Facebook feed who've just shared their own stories, and just how all-encompassing it is and how many people are affected by it, these sort of occurrences in our society, and how little it gets talked about. I think those are the things that struck me the most.
Yeah. It's not all that surprising to me. And as well, I've worked with a lot of young people, so I get to hear, as a youth worker, I get to hear a lot of stories. And I used to be a White Ribbon ambassador for a while, and I went and looked up what they have on statistics at the moment. When you're talking about the amount of people, this is still shocking. Like, you read these statistics and they're still shocking to me, and I should be fairly used to this, but 1 in 3 women in Australia experience physical or sexual violence from someone that they know. 1 in 3.
From people they know.
Someone they know. Yeah.
That's crazy. So in my immediate family, there would be, I don't know, so 7 or 8 women.
This figure is physical or sexual violence. So this is a domestic violence figures. They're not just sexual harassment, but of those two things, 1 in 3 women. 1 is killed a week by a partner or a former partner. 1 in 5 women get stalked. 1 in 5 experience harassment in the workplace. And it's, like the main cause for homelessness for women and children in Australia. Some of these stats are just 1 in 3. This is one that's really happening a lot that I see, is 1 in 3 will end up being victims of some sort of sexting type abuse, and which can lead to really big psychological issues for them. But this is, you're right in that this doesn't get talked about anywhere as near as much as how big the problem is.
Yeah. Why do you reckon that is?
Patriarchy? I don't know. The problem is when some of these issues get raised, and like even the Me Too campaign gets raised, it can be very easy for men to get defensive and say, well, I haven't done that. I didn't do that. You're not talking about me. You feel like you're being attacked. So you get defensive and you're not listening to the problem and you're not dealing with the problem. So I guess that comes with privilege and entitlement and power. These are the issues that women and feminism and stuff has been trying to deal with a lot. I don't know. I get pretty ashamed. I'm ashamed to be a man sometimes. Ashamed to be white. Ashamed to be Christian. Ashamed to, I'm like, because so many of the world's ills are performed by this dude, me.
No, they're not performed by you.
No, but
this is one of the problems with the left, Chris. You start blaming yourself for stuff you didn't do. You're not a racist, Chris. You don't need to apologise for them.
No, but I need to do something about them. And that wasn't one of the other statistics, was that 1 in 6 men, only 1 in 6 would say or do something to fight sexism in the workplace. And so that's why I was really encouraged to see, in response to the Me Too campaign, because here we are, 2 blokes talking about something that affects women a lot. So how do we talk about that? And there was the "How will I change" hashtag. It was in response to that, which was men saying, how will I change? What will I do? And instead of being defensive, people were saying, I'll change by listening. I'll change by standing up. When I see things happen that are not right, I'll change by getting more educated on the issues. That was a really positive thing to see. Yeah. So there was that quote of, for evil to flourish, it only requires good men to do nothing.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chris.
Because?
Well, because I've got a question for you.
Okay.
What is God up to when he's looking down and seeing this sort of abuse happening on such a wide scale?
Shaking his head.
Good man doing nothing.
The responsibility lies with us, with each individual. I don't want to hand that responsibility off to anyone, let alone God. There's so many people saying, oh, but, men can't control themselves, or blaming women for this. And I'm like, no, we need to take responsibility for ourselves and our actions and, educating young guys as they grow up to be responsible as well. We are responsible for whatever consequences come from our actions, and we need to take that responsibility.
No, this is why we need to dress all women in burqas, Chris.
Oh, why is that?
Because if we can't see them, we can't get turned on, Chris. So if every woman wore a burqa, we'd be fine.
Hang on, but
there'd be no problems in society.
Don't you find mystery appealing, though?
Not wrapped in a black piece of cloth, no. No, that's just ugly and boring. I'd much prefer to be down at the beach where there's bikinis everywhere.
I'm not big into the bikinis. I like a bit of mystery.
Yeah, well, so something I've been wondering when you were talking was, because you were talking about all the stats about how prevalent this sort of activity is in our society, and it made me wonder, I could be wrong, but I can't imagine that this is the worst it's ever been for women. When I think of society, 21st century Western civilization, I think of it as being about as good as women have had it.
Yeah.
It's almost as equal as it's ever. I can't think of any other period in history where women have been more equal than men. Like, we're in a society where strength doesn't matter anymore, where it's your brain that really matters. The highest paid positions are where your brain matters, not whether you can lift something heavy. And so that's why men have been so dominant over women for so long, because we're just stronger. Whereas now that doesn't matter. That just gets you a job lifting boxes at Kmart. That doesn't mean anything. Whereas if you've got a good brain, and there's no discrepancy between men and women in brain power. I mean, education-wise, it probably runs the opposite way. Women do better in education than men do. So we live in a society that is about as good as it has ever been for women. And so I wonder whether this sort of activity is at the lowest rate it's ever been at, or maybe it's not because of some of those other issues about how men see themselves in the world and whether that we men see ourselves as losing ground and whether that makes us want to feel dominant in other ways.
I wonder, yeah. That's an interesting point. Sort of like a last gasp of trying to maintain our dominance.
And also, like, I don't know what the stats are in terms of whether sexual harassment, sexual assault is rising or falling. But I would imagine there would be a reporting issue there where I think more women would be freer to report now than what they have in any time in history.
Yeah.
In the same way that if you went to Afghanistan, I don't reckon you'd get too many women saying that they've been harassed, even though harassment there would be a lot worse than what it is here.
Right.
Because if you speak up, you might just get yourself flogged.
I do agree that it's probably there's less of this going on than there used to be, but maybe in different times, you know, men had a bit more control, like it was more socially unacceptable. Because I sort of feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm seeing things that aren't really there, but I see things within my field of work ever since some of these things have happened where I feel like I see boys who feel like they're entitled to treat girls like crap and push them around. And since some of the things that have been happening, I've just been concerned that, I don't know, it sort of gives approval for guys to get away with stuff that they shouldn't be able to get away with.
I just don't know why you would think that hasn't always been the case, though. Like, if you think about 1,000 years ago, like, what's it matter? The dude can just do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Yeah, and
like there's stuff in the Bible about, like, if a dude rapes a woman, well, the woman has to be his husband, a wife.
But that, yeah, and I
imagine that happening today.
And that was there so that there was a consequence for the guy, in the sense that it wasn't going to leave a mother and a child on their own with no way of being able to survive.
Yeah, I don't think it was to do with the consequence for the guy. I think it was to do with to protect the woman.
Yeah, it was to protect the woman. Yeah, but it's pretty sickening to think about. But that's a different time, a different world.
Yeah, so I think we can say we've moved in a positive direction there.
Yeah, we have. So there's a lot of really good... But it was interesting. You said that, you know, feminism has taken us in this direction where women are in a better place than they've ever been, but they're not as happy as they've ever been. Did you want to unpack that at all? Like, or because you sort of made it sound like we don't really know why. What's going on there?
Yeah, we don't know why. Like, there's a few different theories that I've heard about. I'm sure there's theories that I haven't heard about. The ones that I've heard about are that women, as they've moved into the workforce more, the amount of housework that they're doing hasn't decreased by the same amount. So they're doing similar amounts of housework but working as well. There's also this idea that women are feeling pressured to live up to the sort of ideals that feminism has for them, that it's almost like it's less acceptable to stay at home and have kids. You're not doing your bit for feminism if you're staying at home raising kids, whereas if you're out being a high-powered businesswoman, then you're doing your bit for feminism, so go you. There's that sort of idea. There's a concept that there are biological differences between men and women, and if women are feeling pressured to enter into the workforce, then they are not necessarily built biologically for that environment as much as men are, especially since those workplaces have been male-dominated workplaces. So, for instance, I don't know if this really fits in, but I've read about these studies about the differences between men and women and how they respond to criticism. There was a study done in terms of Wikipedia and the amount of contributions made by men compared with contributions made by women. And so, like, the readership of Wikipedia, not as big a difference of the readership numbers between men and women as there was between the contributors, so the people that would actually write the articles or make edits to the articles. So women weren't editing very often on Wikipedia. It was something like 95% of the edits on Wikipedia were by men. And so women weren't editing, they weren't writing stuff down. And so they reckon it's because women just don't like conflict. Obviously, this is a generalization. There's some women who love it, and there's some men like me who don't like conflict. But so the idea is that there are biological differences between men and women, and some of those rear their heads when women choose to put themselves in environments that do have a lot of conflict.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to all be biological. Surely there's a lot to do with nurture and how we're brought up. I was listening to this lady on another podcast talking about girls and sexuality, and she was talking about how the different things they're sort of taught from a young age, how these sorts of things adapt and play out, like their bodies are shamed a lot. There was a story of one girl who was just doing cartwheels. She's, just a little girl, and her top, flies up a bit, and grandma goes, "Oh, you can't do that," So she's get this message, "Oh, I can't do that." You're getting all of these, "I can't do this, I can't do that" messages all of the time. And you just shrink and shrink and shrink a little bit each time. Whereas boys are just sort of get so much more reward. So girls are shamed a lot. And even as we go through all of sex education in schools, the women and boys, they talk about erections and boys climaxing, and then when they get to girls, they talk about periods and unwanted pregnancies. So we go from, it's suddenly this really negative thing for girls. Everything's negative, and it's even when we talk about genitalia in the schoolyard, there's like, if you're tough, you've got balls, and if you're weak, you're a pussy. All of these things that just keep sending this message that you're weaker. And then you get into the workplace and you've got all of these men who feel like they belong, who feel like they should be there. And then you've got women who are trying to fight for their space. And yeah, I can just see women second guessing themselves a lot in situations just because of messages that they've received. So I just think that it's not necessarily all biological.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's got to be a combination of both nurture and nature. I don't think there'd be too many people that would disagree with the nurture argument, but I do think there's some people that try and pretend like men and women are built exactly the same, and it's just not true. That there is some biological stuff there that is different from men and women, and it does play out differently in different areas. And it's not one's better than the other, it's just they're different.
So we get messages as men. I remember someone telling me that men like to look and girls like to be looked at. I don't even know where that came from, but that was one that sort of stuck with me. And so I thought that was a major difference, that I guess that gave permission to look. So there's a lot of stereotypes that play into this.
But that's not just a stereotype.
Okay, what is it?
Surely it's obvious that men do like to look.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some...
I don't know whether women like being looked at. That's probably much more debatable, I would imagine. I find it pretty obvious that men like to look. Like, you only have to look at pornography as one of those areas that you go, well, there's a lot more pornography for men than there is for women, and I don't think that's just because men are the ones making it. I think it's because women don't like to look at it. They're much more emotionally engaged, whereas, they want to watch romantic comedies, whereas men are quite happy just watching porn. It's like they both do the same sort of function for men and women, just in different ways, because we're biologically different.
Yeah, I can accept that. Porn is also a big worry, just porn culture in itself. There's just a lot of porn out there which is very, very much around dominating women and even debasing them. And so you end up with generations that sort of feel like that's what sex is, and a woman should give me what I want when I want it, and then you end up with these people in powerful positions. That's one thing we really need to talk about, though, is power. What is it with these people who are in really high positions of power that have done so much predatory sort of harassment and assault of women? Are the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys and so on, are they just like everyone else, or is there something about the power?
All right, I'm just going to interrupt you there, Chris. Sorry to do that to you. We've got a special caller on the line at the moment.
Hello.
Hello, President Trump. What a surprise. I didn't realise you were one of our beloved listeners. If you don't mind, I might call my wife up. She's a big fan of yours, and I'm sure she'd love to meet you.
I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her.
Well, she's my wife. You can't kiss her.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet.
Well, I think we're all attracted to beautiful women, but that doesn't mean we go and kiss them.
And when you're a star, they let you do it.
Well, are you sure they want you to?
You can do anything.
Hold on, I'm sure you can't do anything.
Grab them by the...
Whoa, okay, we might just leave it there. Thanks for the call, President Trump. You can get back to being the leader of the free world now, thank you.
I can't believe he just said that to us on the line.
He's a very upfront man, Chris. But, you know, that's just locker room talk. He wouldn't actually do anything like that, Chris. It's not like the 11 women that have come forward and alleged things would actually be telling the truth.
When that incident aired, you put money on him not getting the presidency because you were like, there's no way now. And yet...
The second I heard this stuff come across the news feed, I just went, there are 50% of Americans that are women, and not one of them are going to vote for this bloke.
That's what I thought.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
You women that voted for Trump, you owe me $100. It's your fault.
How do... I just don't understand how people have allowed that, because now that just sets up a precedent that sort of behaviour is, if not acceptable, then at least tolerated. You can't tolerate that. Because he said, because of his power, he can do whatever he wants.
Because I'm famous.
Because I'm famous, I can do whatever I
can
want.
Just grab the genitals.
Yeah.
And they don't even mind.
Yeah, they like it.
They love it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know if you've watched it, but the video of it, because he says all this stuff while he's on a bus talking to
yeah, I've seen it.
Some Hollywood bloke idiot. And then they come off the bus and he's introduced to this woman who he's going to do this show with. So this woman has no idea the stuff they've just been talking about. Yeah. And the two of them are just making these stupid little jokes the whole time while this woman has no idea what they're talking about. You know, like saying, do you want to give him a hug? Yeah. And stuff like this. Yeah. And if you could go on a date with either of us, which one would you want to go on a date with? And just the whole time, it's just... disgusting stuff, thinking of what they've just been talking about on the bus.
Yeah, I found it pretty repulsive, but not enough people did. I'm dumbfounded by that.
3 weeks before the election, there was polling done, reported in the Washington Post, that I think it was 75% of Americans believed that Trump had done the things that he was talking about. And 50% of Republicans believed that he had done the things that he was talking about. If that's you, if you believe that, like, fair enough for the people that don't believe it, but if you're one of those 75% that do believe it, what the hell are you doing voting for him? I don't know. There must just be other things that they consider a
bigger priority.
Yeah, which is fair enough. You know, there are other priorities in the world, but geez, I don't know that I want a bloke like that in charge of those priorities.
No.
But obviously they just hated Hillary so much. I don't know, Chris.
No.
But here's my question for you. What is Trump thinking when all this Harvey Weinstein stuff breaks? Because Weinstein's been raked over the coals and Trump has had some difficult questions and that's about it. He hasn't had any consequences from it.
Yeah, and like surely Harvey's going to end up in court. I mean, there's a court case coming against him for some of these accusations. There could very well be consequences. You know, I guess he's going to try and claim that there was consent in those cases.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Yeah, but if a woman is being coerced and he's not letting up and he's trying every trick in the book and he's someone who has this incredible power over them and maybe there's fear that if they don't go along then it might get worse. Yeah,
or you won't get the next movie role.
Yeah, it's coercion, it's using your power, it's wrong. And there's so many women that have been coming. How many of them did you say before have come out and said stuff about Harvey?
It's over 50.
Over 50. So I've been interested also in what the Quentin Tarantinos have had to say. He's had a reply as well. So he's been apologetic. And Kevin Smith, who was one of my favourite directors, he's like, oh man, all of my movies were produced by Harvey. And
yep,
Harvey Weinstein is being raked over the coals, but Trump just keeps walking and talking.
So I've got a thought about this, Chris.
Okay.
So the people that Harvey Weinstein allegedly sexually harassed were famous people.
Yep.
Gwyneth Paltrow, you've heard of her. Angelina Jolie, I've seen her in movies. Whereas the people Trump is accused of sexually harassing were not. I mean, I'm sure someone knows them if they are a Miss Universe aficionado, but they're nowhere near the calibre of celebrity that these other people are. Like, I haven't heard of any of the women.
So does the caliber of celebrity mean that at some point you have enough power that you can wield that you don't feel like you're forced to be silent? Is that what it is?
Or is it that we just relate to it more? Because we know who these people are, when we see them speaking, they already have a level of respect from us. Whereas the women that have accused Trump, we just wouldn't have a clue who they are. And so if you are already a supporter of Trump, you can just write them off. Whereas I think people would find it harder to write off actors that they already respect.
It's a good theory.
Probably the bigger part of it is that politics is so partisan. If you see yourself as a Republican person, confirmation bias kicks in, and anything that runs counter, anything that attacks your side, you just write it off as that's just dirty liberals getting involved in dirty tricks and making allegations that aren't possibly true because Trump's our saviour. Whereas you don't have that in the entertainment world. There's no one that loves Harvey Weinstein's movies so much that they would back him in this sort of situation.
Politics did get dragged into the Harvey Weinstein case because he has been a champion of left causes for a long time. There were right-wing media people that were coming out and pointing to him and saying, look, he's only gotten away with this for so long because he's been a champion of left-wing politics. And when you're a champion of left-wing politics, people look past all of these other things that you could be doing because you've painted this lie that you're this caring social justice warrior sort of thing. And that gives him a chance to get away with this other stuff. And I'm going, yeah, but as soon as all of this came out, everyone on the left just abandoned him. They're not trying to protect him at all. He's being raked over the coals. You know, I'm going, but then there's the Fox News head who also went down for this same sort of sexual harassment stuff.
Roger Ailes.
Oh, that was his name.
And also Bill O'Reilly, who I'm sure you do know.
Yes, I know Bill O'Reilly, yeah.
You know, Bill O'Reilly settled one of his cases out of court for $32 million. That is a lot of money to say that I didn't do something. You know, O.J. Simpson paid the families of the people he killed, well, allegedly killed. Did he get off for that? I don't know. I don't want to get sued.
Well, he got off. You
know what I'm talking about,
but
people.
I think then there was the civil case, which ends up in a monetary...
Okay, well, so he paid $33 million for that.
I think that the way that sort of works is the normal court couldn't prove that he did it, so he got off, but then this other court said that he did do it and he had to pay the money, which is just weird.
So he paid $1 million more than what Bill O'Reilly did for whatever it is Bill O'Reilly did. And that woman is now $32 million richer.
And Bill O'Reilly still walks.
Well, yeah, he got kicked out of his job, though. Well, I don't know about kicked. He left. Fox is a very political station, and it's very ideologically driven. And so I think for the same reason that people would support Trump even through this sort of stuff, I think they'd support Bill O'Reilly too, sadly.
Yeah. How do we go forward? What do we as blokes do?
What do we do?
What do we do?
So I think as guys...
I find the guys thing interesting because now we have a group called Men's Rights Activists, the MRA, because they feel under threat from feminism.
Fair enough.
I think that's a bit ridiculous, though, because it's like the people who complain about Black Lives Matter. It's like, no, all lives matter. It's like, yeah. They're not saying that white lives don't matter, but they're saying that there is a discrepancy in the balance of power, or there's a discrepancy in what matters. And so they're trying to bring things to an equal place, and feminism is the same. We've lived in a very male-dominated culture, and feminism is trying to... They're not anti-male, they're just pro a situation where there is equality. And so with the MRA, I think it's a stretch in a male-dominated society to say, well, or more yell and scream and whine and demonise women as they do, that men are treated unfairly. But in the big picture, Nick, is there that much to complain about for men?
I think there is.
Like what?
I think education's a big one. I mean, you've worked in schools. I think education is...
They're not going to claim for education, though. That's not what they claim for.
Well, I'm not part of their group, so I don't know what they claim for.
Yeah.
But Like, I do think that education is skewed towards how women are wired.
Yeah.
That there's very little hands-on stuff in schools. I'm sure you've been tagged to work with some angry young men who have been told their whole schooling career that they are stupid and they don't fit in this classroom.
Yep.
Whereas there's not many women that I've worked with that fit that category.
There's that. Yep.
So I think there is the reverse, but it's not analogous. I'm not trying to tell you that it's the same sort of ballpark. One of the problems I've got with any of these sort of minority groups is that in any group of people, there's going to be people on the fringe. So in any Black Lives Matter group, there's going to be some people that do take it too far. In any feminist group, there's going to be women who take it too far. Like, I can't remember her name, but there's a woman who's a feminist who says that, I think it might be Clementine Ford, but I don't want to slander her name if it's not her. She says stuff along the line, well, not along the lines, or she says exactly that men can't be feminists. And, like, I find that horrific. If feminism is that everyone should be equal, then yes, I'm signed up for that.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you say that I can't sign up for that. I do sign up for that.
Yeah, I sign up for it. I'm going, the fringe people are annoying, but I'm a feminist.
Yeah, but if instead of having the term feminist, and instead of Black Lives Matter, we just said all lives matter, there would be no extremists.
Then we're not actually addressing what the issue is. All lives matter. That's fine. But it's like we're needing to address the fact that in the US, especially, that black people aren't being treated as if they matter as much. So feminism is getting there, but we're in a better place than we've ever been, but there's still things to be done. And I guess sexual harassment is one of those things. But being a man, it was one thing that I had trouble with, is in the, sort of a changing society with that feminism is sort of shaping a lot of change, is where do I fit as a man? What is a man? How do I be a man? There's not really a sort of much of a rite of passage in our culture. I still struggle with that. I remember the first day I felt like I was a man, Nick. And
when was it, Chris? This sounds fun.
I remember looking at a video, was you and I standing on a hill overlooking a whole bunch of young people on a camp that we were directors of that camp for, and I was watching that video going, oh, I'm a man.
I'm a grown-up.
Yeah.
But that sense of man is just, like, that's not a gendered sense of man. That's just I've grown up. In terms of looking after children anyway.
Well, that was probably more about being interdependent rather than just being a man, in the sense that you go from dependence, codependence, to independence, and to a place where people can depend on you, to be interdependent. So that was the grown-up thing. But defining what a man is has caused a lot of blokes a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And how do they approach women in this new sort of world? And now with all of this Harvey Weinstein and stuff, there's a lot of men who are going, well, I'm too scared to sit in the same office as a woman in case I get some sort of accusation levelled at me of harassment.
Yeah.
And
hey, don't you belittle that, Chris. I won't stand for it.
why should I not?
What percentage of teachers are male?
In general, I don't know, less than 10%.
Guess why?
Oh, you think it's because they're scared of having accusations thrown at them?
I absolutely am convinced of that. Yeah.
You're convinced of that. But I don't know. There's something about men just going, oh, I'm too scared to go into that sort of a role in case I have accusations. I don't know. There's something...
You think it's pathetic?
No, it's not something pathetic. I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say, is that it's a little bit awry, that sort of concept that people shouldn't go into those sorts of roles. Again, it can sort of feel like we're blaming women instead of... It's women's fault. And it's not their fault. Just don't harass them. Don't grab them. Just don't.
You can get accused for things that you didn't do.
Yes, that is something that I do fear.
Well, you have to.
Yeah. Yes.
Like,
It
sucks.
It would ruin my life massively if anyone ever made an accusation like that against me.
Yeah.
It would just destroy my reputation. I don't have much material wealth or anything like that. The thing that matters the most to me is my reputation. It would destroy me.
Yeah.
I have precautions. I try and make sure that if I'm meeting with a girl in my office, that it's not just me and her.
Yeah. And,
But there are
and
times-
those sort of
yeah.
fears,
Yeah.
well, I don't know if it's true for you, but it's true for me. Those sort of fears make the job less enjoyable because you have to be constantly aware of it,
Yeah.
which just sucks, whereas women don't have to. The amount of times I see a female teacher go up to a student, boy or girl, and give them a hug, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't go up and give a male or female student a hug because it's just too risky,
Yeah.
and that sucks.
Yeah, you do have to be careful. It ain't a perfect world. And yeah, it sucks. But we can't blame women. I think we just need to get better at creating a definition of men that doesn't carry the baggage of sexual harasser of women. And even then, though, it plunges meaning into a quandary of if you like a woman, how do you even approach them, especially in this climate?
I didn't know that 30 years ago, Chris, so if you're growing up now, it's no different.
Well, I don't think it's that complicated. You know, a lot of people are going,
Oh.
oh, well, I can't say anything, I can't do anything. And I'm like, going, well, you've just got to read the signs, surely.
Yeah, us autistic people can't read the signs, Chris.
Well, then you find a way to do it in an appropriate place, like not at work.
Where we can't get fired.
You can approach someone without it having to be creepy.
Yeah, us autistic people are pretty good at creepy.
We'll have to write you a self-help guide.
I've got a wife now, Chris, so I don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yep.
It's good.
Yeah, it is good. Man, I'm glad I don't have to go through all of that.
In terms of your question about where to from here, what can we do differently? What can us blokes do differently? What can women do differently? There was a quote from one of the ladies who has alleged that Trump assaulted her, Melinda McGilvray, said that she initially was afraid to speak out and she called it petrifying. She said she felt like she was driven by her patriotic duty as well as the desire to do the right thing by her teenage daughter. I think this is one of the things that we can use to help us make a better future if we don't just think of ourselves but also think of what sort of society are we creating. I don't want to be part of a society where my son or daughter is at risk of these sort of things happening to them. And so if I can keep that in my head, and anytime this sort of behaviour, I mean, like, I don't know about you, but I haven't actually heard anyone telling me these sort of stories other than females that have experienced it. I've heard that, obviously. But I haven't heard any of this locker room talk sort of stuff that Trump talked about.
I don't remember ever having those sorts of conversations with a bunch of blokes. I'm hanging out with the wrong bunch of blokes, apparently, or I'm hanging out with just the right bunch of blokes. That's not normal in my world. But I have heard it from afar in other people's, their circle.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
And I've said nothing.
I've definitely heard men talk about women in degrading ways. That thing is very much a locker room thing. Not me personally have been talking, but I've been in situations where that's been gone on, and I don't think I could honestly say that I've responded to it perfectly or even necessarily acceptably. I'm not a very good social person, but that's a cop-out. That's an explanation, not an excuse. But I do think we do need to get better at, I know that I need to get better at confronting those sort of circumstances so that all blokes get the idea that that is completely unacceptable behaviour. I don't really care about the talk so much, but the talk can create in someone's head that that is how other people behave.
Yeah, it just creates an ongoing culture.
But more than that side of things, I think what we need to do as a society, men or women, I don't think it matters. I think we need to create a society where women don't feel petrified to come forward and talk about this, that they feel like they will be taken seriously and that they feel like there won't be negative consequences for coming out and making accusations, and that if they make accusations that they will get their day in court. Doesn't mean that they will just... We would never want the law to just accept their word and convict whoever, but we do want it to be taken seriously and for it to be investigated. I don't think that's always been the case. That's something we need to do a lot better. And so for whatever any women in my life, I would always want them to feel like they can come and talk to me about any of those sort of issues, and that I would take it seriously and that I would walk with them through that journey of getting the dude in trouble. Because I think it's really important that any woman that feels like she might just be able to accuse the dude, I think that's really important, because these guys, the only thing that stopped Harvey Weinstein was because it came public. Like, there's no reason to think he would have ever stopped.
No.
And so it's only the bravery of those women. Like, I don't know who the first woman was, but whoever she was, she's a legend. You need those first people to get it to stop. It doesn't stop by itself. He was never going to stop himself.
And now the numbers have gone to over 50 because all those other women feel like they can. Yeah.
Yeah.
So incredibly brave.
And that's why we need the people around every woman in the world to be saying that we stand with sexual harassment victims. We're with them the whole way.
I want to see so much more education on it. So much more education in schools. We spend so much time on the maths and English and science, and all of these things are great, but how much time goes into educating people on relating to other people? And it's one of the biggest things that we do in life. The most important thing in life is our relationships. And the most important relationship you might have is with your significant partner. Because if we're just learning from our parents, for some that works, but for others it doesn't. Maybe we're learning from movies, or we're learning from the Trumps and the Weinsteins of the world. We really need to educate young guys and girls on relationship, and young guys especially, on that they have the willpower to be responsible and to make the right choices and decisions that aren't going to psychologically harm others. I actually don't think it's that hard.
Excellent. You've solved this one then, Kris. So I like to end any of these sort of difficult podcasts on a positive note, Kris.
Do we have any easy podcasts? Are we
Easy ones are boring, Kris.
Yeah, I think they're all difficult, right?
Good.
Yeah.
But so you got to try and find the silver lining, Kris.
All right.
So
Point me to the rainbow.
have a think about how Harvey Weinstein feels right now. Have a think about how many restaurants do you think he's going to be able to go and have meals at now? How many movies is he going to release from now on? And more importantly than both of those two things, how many more lives is he going to negatively affect? And so for all of those things, I think about them and go, excellent.
Yeah. Yep.
The bravery of those women coming forward has made a whole bunch of good.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm not exactly a Hollywood expert, but I would have to imagine this has got to be one of the proudest moments in Hollywood's history, that this stuff came out and he's now untouchable. Like, I can't imagine him making Hollywood films again. The Hollywood industry should be pretty proud of itself. And to think how quickly things turned, to think that just overnight they just went, what? That's the sort of dude he is? No, we don't want to be part of that. It gets me to thinking, like, how quickly could things turn in other areas if we took the same sort of approach? If we just come across something that is against what our morals say it is, and we just go, all right, I was totally for this time last week, and now I'm totally against it because I don't stand for that. And if we could do that in other areas, this world would be a pretty darn good place, Kris.
We're getting there.
We are.
Women have more rights than they've ever been. We're getting there, man.
For all those negative people out there,
I'm one of them too. I'm one of those negative ones.
I'm not.
I'm a bit of a pessimist, but then I do have hope.
Like those people that say we're going to hell in a handbasket, what sort of past are you looking at? What time in history would you prefer to be living at than right now in the West? Like, do you really want to live 1,000 years ago? Really? You're insane.
Well, I'd like to live in the future. I want to see where we end up.
Well,
But
bad news, Kris,
I know.
because you're not going to be living in the future or the past.
We're living in the now, so yeah. How do we approach that?
I'll tell you, Kris.
Tell me, Dr. Nick.
We kick arsehole. We kick arseholes like Weinstein and Trump to the curb, and we get on with making Earth great again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Fist pump.
Right on. Oomp. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Cheers. Bye.
Farewell.
Uru.
Adios.
Scott here again. If at any point in this podcast you found yourself yelling vainly into the void at two idiots who can't even hear you and refuse to listen to you, then congratulations, you know exactly how I feel. Luckily for you, there are other ways to contribute. You can leave reviews on iTunes or wherever you listen to it, share it on social media, or discuss it in your blog, podcast, or fellowship group. Subscribe, like, nod your head, raise your fist, shout amen, but probably don't send a prayer because I'm kind of busy right now. Join the discussion in the comments section.